Do you want your business to grow faster? Are you open to new and out-of-the-box ways to drive revenues and increase value? How do you imagine the most successful entrepreneurs and business leaders double, triple, or expand their businesses tenfold or more? This is a weekly podcast featuring conversations with business owners, executives, and leaders as we reveal behind-the-scenes details that give you, our listeners, the confidence to pursue your own deal-driven growth. On the show, we discuss a huge variety of deals, everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions, capital raising, joint ventures, strategic alliances, real estate, affiliate and sponsorship deals, and more, including smaller deals that you can do without significant capital. My name is Kupfer, and I've been supporting deal-driven growth for businesses for over 35 years as a successful entrepreneur, professional negotiator, and attorney. My goal is to help you strategize, plan for, find, and complete deals that will help your company grow faster. Welcome to the DealQuest Podcast. Let's get started. DealQuest community, I'm so excited to introduce you to a remastered episode of the DealQuest Podcast. The podcast has grown so much. We started it about 5 years ago now, at least at the point I'm recording this. In the beginning, had maybe 60 or 80 listeners per episode. We now have many multiples of that. In fact, we've got almost 100 times that. And I realized that there were so many great interviews I did early on in the podcast. In fact, in the first year of the podcast, it wasn't even called DealQuest. It was called Fueling Deals until we rebranded it. And we interviewed some amazing entrepreneurs and deal makers and, just amazing stories, amazing content. And I know that so many of our listeners have joined us over the last several years and may not have heard some of those earlier episodes from 5 years ago, 4 years ago, even 3 years ago. So we have picked the best of those old episodes, and the advice and the stories and the experiences are timeless. So we've remastered them, made sure the audio is great, and put in our new intro and outro, that kind of stuff. And we're going to be re-releasing some of these amazing episodes. So look out for them from time to time. And here's one coming up right now. Today is a solo cast, and I'm going to be talking about negotiating. Now, we've addressed negotiating on a few prior episodes of this podcast in various forms. There was episode 10, where I talked about key steps to maintain healthy negotiations, and that came out of some particular negotiations I was having at the time and some lessons that I thought about. Episode 21, we had Greg Williams on as a guest, and that episode was the art of negotiation and reading body language, because Greg Williams is a phenomenal body language reading expert, and he provided great value there. And then on episode 31, we had Cindy Watson as a guest, and that was an episode on capitalizing on your circumstances to become a successful negotiator. And she's a labor attorney in Canada and does negotiating work mainly with women, but gave some general great negotiating advice on that episode as well. But negotiating is such an important part, not only of deal making, but really of business success in general. And I wanted to spend some more time on it. And in fact, I'm going to spend probably the next 2 or 3 episodes talking more specifically about negotiating and even more specifically about authentic negotiating, which is my brand of negotiating. Many of you know I have a book out on authentic negotiating, came out a couple of years ago, an Amazon bestseller. But I know that not everybody has read the book. And I know that the listeners here, may not have, especially as we've grown our listener base over this past, whatever it's been, almost a year of podcast episodes. Not everybody is that familiar with my negotiating content. And I want to bring some of it here. You can always pick up the book, Authentic Negotiating. If you want to read more, it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all that kind of stuff. And also there's an Audible version. But today I want to talk about, in this segment, I'm going to talk about the fundamental framework that I have in my book and also that I do in my negotiating speeches and trainings and workshops, which I do many of. And, would of course be happy to come to your company or association or organization or entrepreneurs organization or YPO chapter, and speak about. So let me take a step back. The difference between a lot of the work that I do on negotiating, and it comes out of just professionally negotiating for 35 years and studying great negotiators and doing, very significant deals and smaller deals and dispute negotiations and figuring out really what makes a difference. And one of the big differences between authentic negotiating and a lot of the trainings out there is that most of the trainings out there focus on a tactical and strategic level. And, a lot of them are like, okay, here are certain tactics, here are certain counter tactics to those tactics, here are counter tactics to the counter tactics. Discussed in the book and the other content I put out, a lot of those are manipulative. And frankly, at a low level, if you're negotiating about somebody with no sophistication and you're in a transactional mode and you don't care about your reputation or what they think, meaning that should never be the case. But if that's the case, some of these kind of manipulative tactics, quote unquote, work on a temporary basis. But you really don't want to be doing those. And then even the good tactics, and there are definitely good strategies and tactics and counter tactics and that kind of stuff that are useful. But if you put them on top of the base of what I'm going to talk about, the body of internal work that you need to do, and you haven't done that internal work, and you come into a negotiation, for example, in a place of scarcity or desperation or fear or, upsetting or ego, any of these things, I don't care what tactics you put on top of them, even the good ones, you're not going to be successful. So what I talk about is true negotiating success and the work you need to do that. And the fundamental framework that I have for that is CDE. So it's easy to remember. It's CDE. The C stands for clarity. Clarity is the first fundamental principle, and it's the first one you should focus on. And it's amazing to me how often people go into even multi-million-dollar negotiations without the level of clarity that I think they should have. In fact, the majority of the time, if people are working with me, they don't. So what does it take to get true clarity? First of all, there's an external body of work that you need to do, which, involves research of the market and the party on the other side and the particular negotiator and, what is fair valuation or terms or whatever for this type of deal. And all of that external due diligence and research that you want to do to put you in the best position to know what they are likely to do, what the market is, what's fair, and all that kind of stuff, okay? And that's something that, frankly, people skimp on, but it's not the one that I'm most concerned with because smart negotiators will do at least that. But then there's also an internal body of work to get to a point of clarity. And if you are an individual negotiator, whether you're a business owner doing a deal or an executive, or negotiating personally for whether you're buying a home or a car or anything else, the internal body of work has to do with getting clear on exactly what's acceptable and what's not acceptable to you. Meaning what terms are going to work for you, what combination of things are going to work for you, and what's going to not work for you. Because what happens is people rush into this design a strategy for negotiating, but they haven't done that fundamental work. And I'll question them on it, or I'll prepare a client if I'm either acting as their attorney or as a negotiating consultant behind the scenes for them. Well, certainly working with them if I'm going to handle the negotiation in either of those capacities as a professional negotiator, as an attorney. And we're going to really drill down. Like, what is it that you truly want? What is it? What is the bottom line on all the important terms? Obviously, there's price or cost, but there's also, might be delivery time of services or goods, payment schedules, other non-monetary terms that impact the deal. Maybe you're selling a company and you want to make sure that your key employees have jobs. There's a million possible terms, but on any given deal, there's probably 5 or 10 or maybe 15 key terms in a deal that you want to be sure of, are there. And if you don't get crystal clear on every single one of them and whether they're acceptable to you, or not just only from an external research point of view, but from where it sits in your inner truth on what will work for you and what will not, for the deal, then you're in trouble because you don't know how to design a negotiating strategy. You also don't know what to say yes or no to. In the heat of a negotiation, you easily get thrown off. So there's a clarity process that I take people through. One of the many exercises I do in that clarity process is what I call a true bottom line exercise, a true bottom line exercise. And bottom line could be low, could be high. It's just, what is the ultimate line at which, you draw a line, not from some place of upset or anger or ego, but from a place of clarity. So it's easiest to illustrate with money, although it doesn't always have to be money. But let's say you are selling a company or selling a product or, selling your services. What is the number? So I'm going to use an example of selling a company, but you can think of it in terms of selling a product or services as well. If you bill at $500 an hour or $5,000 for the project, if somebody tries to negotiate down, what's the bottom line number on what you are willing to do? So let's say it's a company. And let's say, I'll often say to clients, hey, all right, what would you like to get for your company? Well, ideally, Corey, I'd love to get $12 million for my company, right? Or 1.2 million or 120,000. Just don't get worried about the multiples. It could be 12 billion. It could be the principles apply the same. So let's use an example of 12 million. I'd love to get that. Okay. What would you be, pretty happy with? Oh, 11 million. What's your bottom line? 10 million. Okay. So your bottom line is 10 million. You won't take anything less than that. Nope. I won't take anything less than $10 million. Okay, so now I test this because people often say they have a bottom line on something and it's not their true bottom line. It's not their true bottom line because either they haven't been honest with themselves, which is often the case, or they're hesitant to be honest with their professionals. And frankly, I don't have the second problem as much because I have a high level of trust with my clients, but occasionally it comes up with a new client who doesn't know me and we're getting in there. And, it certainly comes up with real estate brokers and other kind of brokers in the space, whether they question loyalty and is somebody going to sell me out if they know my true bottom line. What I always say is, listen, if you are working with a professional that you cannot be fully transparent or authentic with, then you shouldn't be working with them. You should find someone else if you possibly can. Let's eliminate that for a second. The other big piece is that people think that's their bottom line, but when push comes to shove, they may make a different decision. So I test it with my true bottom line exercise. How do I test it? Well, in the case of money, I call it not a penny less than. So I'll say to them, okay, good. Let's say you have a dozen terms of the deal that are important. You've gotten clarity on every single one of them as to what is acceptable to you. One of those terms is that $10 million minimum purchase price, right? Let's say on the other 11 terms that were crucial out of the 12, you got exactly what you wanted. But instead of getting $10 million, the offer is $9,999,999.99. Yes, I truly mean a penny less. When I run negotiating trainings and I ask people this question, and I frankly am sort of setting them up, but so if you're in one of my workshops, you'll be on to me now. But, pretty much to a person when I say, well, you get everything else you want, all 11 other terms are exactly what you want, but instead of 10 million, it's 9,999,999.99. Penny less, do you take the deal? And almost to a person, they'll say, of course I do. I'm not going to walk away for a penny. Well, at a surface level, that seems like it probably means it's the right answer. It seems stupid in a micro conversation to lose a deal over a penny. The problem is when you're preparing for a negotiation, you need to have a number that's not a penny less. Why? Because what if it's now, instead of $999,999.99, it's now 98 cents, 97 cents, 96 cents. Do you see how by going down a penny at a time, I can end up at zero? So there's got to be a number that's not a penny less, or if you're paying the money, not a penny more, or if you're delivering goods, not a day more or a day less, or you're locking into an employment or consulting agreement, not a day more or a day less. And literally that level of clarity. So once you get to that level of clarity, you can start to design a negotiating strategy. Now, I want to make a distinction that I'll talk a little bit in another podcast about when I get to the 6 top reasons that negotiations fail. I want to make a distinction between rigidity, which is one of the reasons negotiations fail, and clarity. What I'm saying is you're not in that place of a penny less from a place of rigidity. See, in rigidity, you have, I'm clenching my fist right now. You can't see it, but you have that energy of being stubborn or rigid. Clarity is a very calm place. There's no emotion around it. There's no contraction around it. It's just like, no, this is my number, right? Can't do less than that, right? If it's not 10 million, if it's literally 9,999,999, I'm not going to take it. And I'm okay with that. So first you get that level of clarity, right? That's the key base work. The second thing you do is, or the second letter in the CDEs is a D for detachment. What do I mean by detachment? Detachment means not that you don't care, right? From what I understand, and I'm far from an expert in Buddhist teachings, they don't use the word detachment because they look at that as uncaring. They use unattached. But I mean it like unattached when I say detachment, meaning that you are engaged in the process. You can even, not only could you, but you should have a preference. If you and I are negotiating a deal, I should have a preference. I get the deal done with you and you with me, because why else are we wasting our time? But ultimately, we need to be detached to the outcome. We need to say, hey, we got super clear in our clarity process on exactly what works for us and what doesn't work for each of us. And we'll either get that or we won't. And if we don't, we are equally, or I am, equally okay with not doing the deal as I am doing the deal. And this is this is the simplest maybe concept to understand and one of the hardest ones to actually implement. But every master negotiator I know is willing to walk away from a deal if it doesn't meet their criteria. And by the way, here's the key. They don't do it from a place of upset, anger, ego. They don't come from a place of judgment. You are not a jerk or any other bad name I can call you on the other side of the table because we didn't get a deal done. It's just that my objectives on what I need to be willing to do a deal don't meet your objectives on what you need to do a deal right now. Maybe we will do a deal in the future. Maybe we'll never do a deal. Maybe I'm meant to do a deal with someone else now. Maybe it's not time for me to do a deal. So being detached comes down to a level of trust, right? To having a deep trust that if you're meant to do a deal, you'll do it. If you don't, you won't, right? So you're not in a place of scarcity or desperation, which is something we'll talk about in a separate podcast. You're able to be detached to the outcome. You have a preference. You move towards that. You're engaged in the process. You do what you can to get the deal done. But if it doesn't meet your criteria, you thank the other person and you trust it's not time to do a deal. The E in the CDE, so we have clarity, detachment. The E is equilibrium. What does equilibrium mean? It's that ability during a negotiation to stay centered, to stay calm, to stay connected to your clarity and detachment, to not get thrown off in the heat of the negotiation, to not get triggered by something someone else says. Your company's not worth half that, or whatever a tactic, they try to pull on you. You don't get thrown off. And listen, that's also easier said than done. Sometimes we can do great preparation, get clear, think we're going to be in a place of detachment, and we get into the negotiation and we get thrown off our equilibrium. We get triggered. And that puts us in a position where we're in trouble. Because if we get into that place where we're upset or we're scared or we're in a place of scarcity, we're afraid to lose the deal, whatever it is, that throws off our equilibrium, then what's going to happen is we're going to lose connection to our clarity and we're going to be challenged in staying detached. So we talk about ways to keep equilibrium. Now, there's a bunch of stuff in the book, and in a later podcast, I'm going to talk specifically about my CPR tool. When I give talks, I say, hey, if you understand CDE, which is what I just explained, and CPR, which I'm going to explain in a later solo cast, which is a context, purpose, and results methodology that I teach. You understand those 6 letters and you're going to be in much better shape to be a great negotiator compared to most people. And that's true. But I'll give you one tip on equilibrium right now. And that is to say, in addition to the CPR tool, which watch out for in a couple of solo casts down the line, as I get to some more of these negotiating points. What I will say is, listen, look at what you do to get yourself recentered in life, right? Are you somebody that meditates? Are you somebody who's a runner who goes out to clear the head by running? Or exercising in some other way? Are you somebody that needs to call a trusted friend and, talk things out? Are you analytical where you have to make lists of spreadsheets that'll get your head clear? Well, whatever you do to get recentered in life, to get to a calm place in life, to get reconnected to your truth in life is something that you can use in a negotiation, right? If you are about to enter a negotiation and you're somebody who exercises to get your head clear or meditates, you should probably exercise or meditate before you get in there.
It's amazing.
And then if you feel yourself getting thrown off while you're in the room, the best simple tip is to take a break. Say, listen, I just need some time to think about it, or I need to go to the restroom, or why don't we break for lunch, or, let's take some time. Things are getting heated. Let's come back tomorrow. And then it will give you an opportunity, one, to just step out of the situation and get some perspective, but also then to go do whatever you need to do, phone a friend, meditate, etc., before you go back into that negotiating room. So that is the fundamental framework: clarity, detachment, equilibrium. And I will tell you, there's a lot to that, right? I'll expand on some of it when I talk about some of the other things I'm going to talk about in future solo casts. For example, on the 6 reasons negotiations fail, the top 6 reasons negotiations fail. We'll delve into that a little more, or, we're going to talk about also the 5 steps to being a great negotiator. We'll talk about some inauthentic negotiating techniques at some point down the line, and we'll talk about the CPR framework. But if you are able to get to clarity, detachment, and equilibrium, then you will be honestly at an advantage over 90% of the negotiators. And I don't care what other training they've done, what tactic or class they've taken that teaches them tactics and counter tactics, because you'll be in a position where you're in such clarity and you're detached to the outcome. You're able to stand in your truth, and you are calm and you are clear and you are listening, which is a key skill in negotiating we'll talk about, and you're going to be in much better shape. So again, we will get into some of the more practical aspects and ways that you get thrown off your clarity, detachment, equilibrium, some ways to deal with that and get on track in future solo casts. But for now, I'm going to leave it at that fundamental framework. If you want more information on it, you can definitely check out the book, look at some of my other content. Certainly reach out anytime if you need some negotiating support. Thank you for joining me on this episode of DealQuest, where we help you understand how deal-driven growth can be your ticket to freedom. I want to invite you to a unique way to tap into the wisdom and experience of the DealQuest community. The Deal Den is a place where entrepreneurs, high-level executives, and business leaders come together, support each other's growth and success, and share what's working best, as well as what challenges we are facing right now. You will get input not only from me, but from all of our members. We collaborate and serve each other. To join us, go to corykupfer.com/dealden. I'll see you there. I'm Corey Kupfer. Until next week, wishing you the freedom and financial prosperity that I know your DealQuest will bring.